You ever have one of those mornings where you're staring at a wall of drywall you just opened up and it looks like a giant angry bowl of metallic spaghetti?
I assume you aren't talking about a high-end Italian restaurant, Tiger. What did you find this time?
My neighbor's guest bath. I went in there to fix a simple drip, ended up peeling back a patch of damp rock, and found a creative mix of three different eras of plumbing. It's like a timeline of human regret. We've got galvanized steel at the bottom, a middle section of copper that looks like it was soldered during an earthquake, and then some gray polybutylene that's probably waiting for its moment to ruin the floorboards.
The trifecta of not my problem anymore. But it brings up the big question everyone hits eventually when they're standing in the home center aisle. Do you go with the shiny, classic copper that looks like money? Or the flexible PEX that looks like, well, a garden hose for your walls?
It's the ultimate trade-off, Alex. It's like choosing between a hand-carved mahogany chair and a high-end ergonomic mesh office seat. One is heritage, the other is pure efficiency. I grew up in the church of the propane torch. There's a certain magic to getting a joint perfectly clean, brushing on that flux, and watching the silver solder get sucked into the fitting by physics alone. It's a craft.
Spoken like a man who has burned his knuckles more than once. But be honest, is that magic worth the 3-hour wrestling match and the fire hazard in a crawl space?
That's the rub, isn't it? If you're building a temple to plumbing, sure. But if you're just trying to get the dishwasher running before your spouse loses patience, the conversation changes. Today, I want to really peel back the layers on copper versus PEX. No fluff, just the grit of which one is going to keep your socks dry for the next 50 years.
Let's start with the heritage stuff. Copper. It's been the gold standard since, what, the 70s?
Earlier, really. It started kicking galvanized steel to the curb after the Second World War. By the 70s, it was the king. And for good reason. Copper is a beast. It's a biostatic material, which is a fancy way of saying it doesn't let bacteria set up shop inside your pipes. If you're worried about what's in your morning coffee, copper is a pretty loyal friend.
And it lasts. Every listing for an old house mentions all copper plumbing like it's a diamond ring.
It is. You're looking at a 50 to 70-year lifespan if the water chemistry is right. It's tough. You don't have to worry about a stray mouse decided your water line is a snack. And if you've got a line running through an unconditioned space where the sun hits it, copper couldn't care less. UV rays just give it a nice patina.
But, and I know there's a but, I looked at the prices lately. It's like buying precious jewelry at the hardware store.
It's painful. You're not kidding. A 10-foot stick of copper right now is enough to make you consider just carrying buckets of water from the creek. We're talking 10, maybe 12 times the cost of PEX per foot. When I'm quoting a job, the copper line item is the one that makes homeowners start sweating.
Beyond the price, though, it's the labor. I've watched you solder. It looks like a dance, but if you trip, the house burns down.
Exactly. You got to be a bit of a surgeon. You're working with an open flame in a cavity filled with 100-year-old pine that's basically tinder. I've spent many a minute holding a fire shield and a spray bottle, praying the insulation doesn't catch a spark. Plus, think about the geometry. Every time you need to turn a corner with copper, that's 2 cuts, a fitting, cleaning, fluxing, and 2 solder points. In a standard bathroom, you might have 50 potential leak points before you're done.
Which is where the spaghetti comes in. Enter PEX.
Cross-linked polyethylene. It sounds like something from a sci-fi lab, but it's basically just very tough, very flexible plastic. It's been around in Europe for ages, but it really took over here in the early 2000s. And man, it changed the game for the solo builder.
I love that you can just snake it through a hole in a joist. It's like threading a needle instead of building a Lego tower.
That's the PEX win right there. One continuous piece of tubing from the basement to the sink, no joints in the walls. That's the dream, Alex. Most leaks happen at the fittings. If there are no fittings between point A and point B, your chances of a Friday night flood drop to almost zero.
But I've heard the horror stories. Rodents, chemicals, the plastic taste. Is that just copper purist propaganda, or is there some truth there?
A little of both. Look, PEX is susceptible to 2 things copper laughs at: UV light and teeth. If you leave a coil of PEX in the back of your truck for a few weeks in the summer sun, it's garbage. The plastic breaks down and becomes brittle. And yes, a particularly bored squirrel or mouse can chew through it. As for the chemicals, there's been some debate about leaching. Most modern PEX is very safe, but if you're a purist who wants zero contact with polymers, copper is your only path.
What about the freezing? Because I live in a place where winter is a seasonal threat to my sanity.
This is where PEX wins the trophy. Copper is rigid. When water turns to ice inside a copper pipe, that pipe loses the fight. It splits like an overripe tomato. PEX, though, it's got a bit of give to it. It can expand when the ice forms and then shrink back down when it thaws. It's not invincible, but it's much more forgiving of a North Dakota January than copper will ever be.
Okay, so if I'm sold on PEX for my basement remodel, I pull up the website and I see PEX A and PEX B. They look the same to me. Is this just marketing, or am I going to regret grabbing the wrong color of spaghetti?
Oh, that's the fork in the road that trips everyone up. It's not just marketing, it's the entire way the pipe behaves. PEX A is the pro stuff. They use a high temperature peroxide method to cross-link the molecules. The result is a pipe that has memory.
Memory, like it remembers its childhood?
In a way, if you kink PEX A, you can actually hit it with a heat gun, and it will magically return to its original shape. For installation, you use an expansion tool. You stretch the end of the pipe out, slide it over a fitting, and it literally shrinks down and grips the fitting like it's never letting go. It's a fantastic connection because the fitting doesn't restrict the water flow much.
And PEX B? That's the one I see in the big boxes mostly.
Yeah, that's the crimp system. The pipe is a bit stiffer. It doesn't have that memory. If you kink it, you're cutting that section out and starting over. You use a metal ring and a crimp tool to squeeze the pipe onto the fitting. It's cheaper, the tools are cheaper, and honestly, for most DIYers, it's perfectly fine. But the fittings for PEX B sit inside the pipe, which means you're narrowing the water's path a little bit. If you got low water pressure to begin with, a lot of PEX B fittings can make your shower feel like a sad watering can.
So if I'm doing a whole house, I want the expansion stuff, the PEX A. But if I'm just adding a utility sink, PEX B is the get-it-done choice?
That's a fair way to slice it. But don't forget the tools. To do PEX A right, you need an expansion tool that can cost a couple $100. To do PEX B, you can get a crimper for $40. If it's a one-off job, the math usually points to PEX B or, dare I say it, the forbidden fitting.
Oh, you mean the shark bite? The one every professional plumber on the internet seems to have a blood feud with?
The push to connect. Look, I've got a dry sense of humor, but I don't joke about leaks. Those fittings are a miracle of engineering. They have a little O-ring and metal teeth that grab the pipe. No tools, just push. They're amazing for a quick fix behind a vanity. But would I bury 50 of them inside a closed wall? I wouldn't sleep well. They rely on a rubber seal, and rubber eventually loses its spark. I like a mechanical connection, a crimp, or a solder joint when I'm sealing up the drywall.
It's the difference between a zip tie and a bolt. One is for right now, the other is for the grandkids.
Exactly. Now, one thing nobody ever thinks about with PEX is the repipe reality. If you have an old house with copper that's pinholing because your local water is too acidic, you can't just fix it. You're looking at a massive bill. PEX is much more resistant to that aggressive water. It's the modern solution for a world where we don't always know what's coming through the municipal lines.
Okay, let's play a game. I'm going to give you a scenario, and you tell me which material you're grabbing from the truck.
I'm ready. Lay it on me.
Scenario 1. You're building a high-end outdoor kitchen. Exposed pipes, lots of sun, and you want it to look like $1 million.
Copper, hands down. PEX would turn into a brittle mess in a year under that UV. And besides, there's nothing prettier than polished copper against some nice stonework. It's functional art.
Scenario 2. You're redoing a laundry room in a cramped basement with 3 other pipes in the way, and you have to go through a double-thick rim joist.
PEX. I am not trying to solder in a bird's nest of old wood and existing lines. I'll snip a hole, feed that PEX through like a snake, and be home in time for lunch.
Scenario 3. The main water line coming into the house.
Usually I want copper for that first entry point. It's the anchor of the system. It gives you a solid place to ground your electrical system, something people forget PEX can't do. And it's tough enough to handle the vibration of the main valve. From there, I go to a manifold and branch out with PEX. That's the hybrid approach that the smart money is on these days.
The manifold? That's the home run system, right? Like an electrical breaker box, but for water?
Precisely. That's the real beauty of PEX. You have one central hub. Every fixture in the house gets its own dedicated line. If the kids break the faucet in the upstairs guest bath, you don't have to shut off the water to the whole house. You just go to the basement, flip the little valve on the manifold for guest bath, and you can still take a shower while the sink is out of commission.
See, that's the kind of logic I can get behind. It's about control. But wait, I've seen those fatal mistake videos on YouTube. People saying PEX fails in 5 years. What are they doing wrong?
Usually it's one of three things. One, they used it outdoors or near a window where it got cooked by the sun. Two, they used the wrong rings or didn't calibrate their crimp tool. If that ring is even a hair too loose, it's a ticking time bomb. And three, they used PEX for a recirc system with way too much chlorine and heat. Some of the older PEX couldn't handle high velocity hot water with high chlorine levels. It would basically erode from the inside out.
So it's not the material's fault, it's the human with the tool.
Isn't it always? I've seen copper fail too because someone didn't wipe the flux off the pipe after soldering. That leftover flux is acidic. Over 10 years, it'll eat a hole right through the metal from the outside in. We call it green death. You see that crusty green stuff on a joint? That's a craftsman who skipped the last step.
Green death sounds like something out of a horror movie. So, for the person listening who's staring at a leaky pipe under their sink right now, what's the first move?
Assess your patience. If you want to learn a skill that feels like a real trade, buy a torch kit and some scraps of copper and practice on the driveway. It's incredibly satisfying. But if you just want to solve the problem and get on with your life, go get a PEX crimp tool and a handful of fittings. It's hard to mess up if you follow the lines.
And maybe keep a shark bite in the drawer for the midnight emergencies.
Fine, keep one in the drawer. Just don't tell the guys at the plumbing supply house I said it was okay. At the end of the day, a house is just a machine we live in. Copper is the heavy-duty cast iron parts. PEX is the high-tech flexible gaskets. There's room for both. The real trick isn't deciding which one is better. It's knowing which one is right for the specific headache you're trying to cure.
And making sure you don't burn the house down in the process.
Amen to that. My eyebrows have finally grown back from the great guest bath incident of '04, and I'd like to keep them.
That's a story for the next episode.
You bet. Bottom line, copper for the heritage, PEX for the hustle. Both will keep the water where it belongs, as long as you treat them with a little respect. Thanks for hanging out in the den today. Now go check your crawl space. I guarantee there's something under there that needs your attention.
Or just stay here and listen to us. It's much drier.
True enough. See you next time.